Hello again. On to another Fresh from the Theater review. I just got back from seeing The Devil Wears Prada 2. Anyone who's familiar with me is probably thinking, this is the last movie that I would go to see, but believe it or not, I am familiar with and actually do really like the first Devil Wears Prada from 2006. It's a film that I surprisingly really got into, and before I get into the new one, I just want to talk about how I got into the original, which was, I did not see it in the theater when it came out. I was 11, and it is not the type of film I would have been interested in at that age, but in high school, I had a mass media class where I learned about stuff like TV and production, and our teacher at the time had a thing where he would occasionally play us some movies that covered the subject of production and television and other stuff if it related to the media, and one of those actually was The Devil Wears Prada, because it's about a magazine, the fashion industry, and there was a lot to actually take from that film. And yeah, it was clearly marketed mostly as a chick film, but when you actually see it, it again covers a lot of ground and transcends in a way that goes beyond just the target audience it was pushed at. And again, there was really a lot to learn. Like, it gave a very raw, very honest, just not sugar-coated portrayal of the business side of the magazine, fashion industry, and just the harsh, stress-fueled environment that goes along with that. And the cast all did a very great job. Anne Hathaway, who I've always been a fan of, Emily Blunt, Meryl Streep, of course, Stanley Tucci. Like, everybody did well. Like, yes, some of their characters were, I guess you could say, a little stereotypical, but they gave them a lot of depth, and they were not one-note characters. And it's one of the, along with a few other movies, one of the few positive things I remember about that mass media class, because in general the teacher was kind of useless. I'm not going to go into it too much, just not the best, and a big problem with him was he never really finished the movies he started to show us, so I actually had to go get a DVD of The Devil Wears Prada to figure out how the fucking film ended. And you know what? I rewatched it just before this one, and I still really like it. It carries a lot, and I really care about what goes on, and it has a real, genuine journey and arc to it. And because apparently no movie can stay on its own, or no franchise can stay ended, they announced that they were making a sequel, and honestly, the idea of a follow-up to The Devil Wears Prada I thought would be interesting, and there's been a few ideas tossed around over the years. Just be interesting to see them pick up, see where the relationship between these characters, particularly Miranda Priestley and Andy Sachs, like how it could work many years later, see how it would develop with the characters being older and other stuff. And it was an interesting surprise when it was announced, and I was curious because I really did love the first film, so I was wondering, as far as legacy sequels go, are they gonna go Top Gun Maverick or Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? And now that I've seen it, I can say this is very much in the Crystal Skull camp. I really did not like this goddamn movie. A big question I had going in was, would it still have the raw, harsh, no holds barred, doesn't pull its punches attitude of the first film? And sad to say, no it doesn't. This film just feels like it doesn't need to exist, and the characters, whatever development we saw with them in the original, is just squished or made almost a bad parody here. and the characters, they become something that doesn't even resemble what they were in the original. Like, it almost reminds me of the Star Wars Legacy sequels, where they made them older, the original characters, but they don't feel like, yes, when you get older, you're different, but they made them a little too different to the point that they just don't resemble what I saw in the original. And right away, the plot is basically Andy has become a big journalist, but the paper that she works for downsizes and fires her and her other friends who are also reporters. They get this news just as they're at an award ceremony, and she has a bit of a meltdown on the stage, which, yeah, it's a stressful situation, horrible news to get, but again, this doesn't exactly feel like, this feels more like what the character at the very beginning of the first film would be like. This doesn't feel like the character we got near the end of the first film, and especially with 20 fucking years of being in the game at this point. And as that's going on, the Runway magazine, focus of the first film, is in the middle of a scandal involving doing business with sweatshops. It's not really explained that much, and they're in a PR nightmare, and one thing leads to another, and Andy comes back to Runway, and a joke that was in the trailer that I was not a fan of was she arrives and Miranda doesn't recognize her. And they do that here, although it may have just been Miranda being her usual mean self, but it's hard to say. And Andy becomes like the column writer, I think. Again, it's a little hard. Like, I don't know and really don't care about fashion magazines, so forgive me if I get a few things wrong, but yeah, she tries to write some pieces, some stories, and as the film goes on, we see that the company that owns Runway is going through its own changing of the guard and downsizing. And it becomes a case of Andy trying to help Miranda for who knows what fucking reasons are in her head, tries to help her keep the company and keep things afloat. And yes, they have history, but the way they have the Andy character, like, as always, I wrote down my pros and cons, and I had so many cons I had to go beyond just one card. But as far as the pros, a big theme of this is how in this day and age magazines aren't what they used to be, and a lot of what they do now goes online, and the changing of the times, social media, the stress that goes with that, the news, and there were a few good jokes there, and there was also some bits where Miranda, who did whatever the fuck she wanted in the first film, now has to deal with the culture changing and having to not say certain things. Like, they have a few alright jabs at trying to make places safe, although at times it becomes a bit cringy, and you're going to hear that word more than once here. One part that I thought was well done was how the new boss, who comes in about halfway through, who's played by BJ Novak, is one of those young, bro-y type CEOs who has his own ideas of the future, goes off everything he sees online, and has no respect for the elders, particularly Miranda. And the scenes with them, they were well done. I thought they handled things pretty well. But aside from a small amount of the shit with the internet, the websites, the commentary in this film is just not as strong as it was in the original, where it was handled with a lot more subtlety. The original was, one of its big strong suits is, it was not like beating you over the head. It was subtle, and also it felt like it could be real life at times. Maybe there was an exaggerated moment, but it felt very real in terms of its portrayal of the harsh, soul-sucking environment of these type of businesses. Here, things get a bit too silly and ridiculous. Like, there's a scene where a character has a heart attack and dies, and then we cut right to the funeral, and it's practically out of a sitcom, and there's also a subplot involving like scheming behind people's backs, and there's a one shot of two characters on a speedboat that almost, like it was in the trailer, it almost looks like something from a fucking Mission Impossible movie. Like, this is becoming this one feels less like real, relatable life, and just more like an exaggerated adventure fantasy. And before I forget to mention some specific cons I wrote down, I guess one other big thing to say about the tone is the original had its fun side, but it remembered to keep things harsh and stressful. It did not glamorize everything, even though it's in the fashion industry. Here, the tone is a bit too just upbeat at times. Before I forget, this is just a small thing, but I said they handle a lot of the social media stuff pretty well. There's a bit near the end where they bring up the subject of AI, which made me pull off my glasses and just look up in the dark theater. Just like, do we have to bring AI into every fucking thing these days? But anyway, a big thing for me is I really like Anne Hathaway. I thought she was just excellent in the first Devil Wears Prada, but here with the character of Andy, as I said, she at times doesn't feel like she's developed that much, and there are parts where she acts like she's maybe older and has skin in the game, but then there are times where she goes back to the naive crybaby that she was in the first half hour of the original Devil Wears Prada. If you hear a noise, there's a fucking bird outside chirping. Fuck. Anyway, she just keeps going. It's a real jumbled mess, very bipolar, and just like, she should know better, some of the stuff she's doing, some of the things that she's experiencing. I mean, did she learn fucking nothing from the first film? There's also a lot of new cast members in this film, like the original main four, Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, Stanley Tucci, Emily Blunt, they're all back. One or two others, but some new people in the cast include Lucy Liu, Kenneth Branagh, who plays Miranda's new husband, who has a lot more screen time than the husband in the last film, and Justin Theroux, who plays Emily's love interest, and all three of these actors are just wasted. Lucy Liu, basically, she only has like 2 scenes, and while she plays a big part, she's just kind of an extended cameo. Kenneth Branagh, he has a few nice moments with Meryl Streep, but overall he's just kind of there. Like, it's not a bad performance, but it wasn't really anything that merited them getting him. And Justin Theroux, holy fucking shit, was he the most annoying sack of shit in this film. And I get that that was probably the point, but they made him way too grating. The scenes with him and Emily Blunt together are just nails on a fucking chalkboard. And while the original movie avoided doing the rom-com cliches, like there was some romance, but it was not a rom-com. This movie devotes a lot of its screen time to rom-com shit, and not the charming type. There is a lot of giggling, couples making jokes. There's a lot of obnoxious behavior in this film that I guess from a certain perspective might seem cute, but to me it was just annoying. Justin Theroux by far was the most annoying fucking thing in this movie. Just every scene with him, it was like stepping on broken glass. Even B.J. Novak, who I think had some good scenes with Meryl Streep, they were all fucking wasted in this. The only appearance, again, it's just a cameo that was kind of funny, was we get a cameo as herself by Lady Gaga, who appears for a fashion show where she sings a song, and it's basically just a music video worked into the film, but it's well made, it's well shot, and hey, it's Lady Gaga. She sings her fucking heart out. And she has a funny exchange with Meryl Streep that, it was a decent cameo. Unfortunately, that's the thing, there's a couple of decent scenes in this film, but they're in between so many dragged out, melodramatic scenes that it just wasn't worth it. And now, if you're still interested in seeing this film after what I said, please save your time and money. But if you really want to go fucking see it, then stop here, go, because I'm going to talk about some spoiler shit. And as always, I'll give you a few seconds to make up your mind.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
If you want some more sex and violence, with a helping of roller derby, outer space, and criminal trials, that means you miss Skinemax. Pick up my new book, Skinemax, a love letter to all things softcore in the 90s, over on Amazon, which is on ebook, paperback, and hardcover. I hope you enjoy.
Okay, first, the positive spoilers, and this should be very brief because there's basically only one. First of all, and this is going to start out as a little bit of a con, I love Stanley Tucci. I loved him in the original, but his character becomes just, again, this like, every character in this film kind of feels like a shell of their former self, and him especially, like he just feels broken and old. And the only scene with him that I really got into was the very last scene between him and Anne Hathaway, where we find out he was actually a big part in her getting hired to save Runway. It's a genuinely nice moment, especially when they hug each other. I just wish we had more scenes like that throughout the film, and I guess a big thing that hurts this is Miranda Priestly. She was mean, she was harsh, she was just a nasty bitch, but she ran her business, she knew what to do, and she was just a fascinating character. And it goes back to what I've heard from people like John Travolta. The character doesn't have to be likable, but they have to be interesting, and she was very interesting in the first. Here, she has to deal with, obviously, safe culture, safe space shit, PC crap. You can tell she's struggling to, like, adapt, and while I could get that, they just make her, I know she's older, maybe this is the theme they were going for, that she doesn't have the same amount of fight in her as she used to, but we also see many scenes of her being vulnerable, and we only had one vulnerable scene with her in the original, and it was an amazing scene. Here, they just make her so open and crap. It got to the point where, as I said, her character doesn't feel like the same character, and the whole movie could be described by my initial thoughts of Miranda Priestly and The Devil Wears Prada 2. This movie is a shell of its predecessor. The last film was an incredible surprise. This one was a disappointing surprise. Miranda, she has these moments where it just kind of ruins the character. They give her moments where she's too nice, too pleasant to people that she mistreated in the past, and these moments kind of come out of nowhere. Another thing that comes out of nowhere is when they try to stop Runway being downsized. Emily becomes the fucking villain of the film. She becomes the bad guy out of nowhere more than Sam Neill in Event Horizon. Just happens like that. And then at the end, she loses, and then her last scene with Anne Hathaway feels as tacked on as you could fucking get. They try to give her a redemption moment, and it's like a 180. It comes out of nowhere, and honestly, it's considering what she did before, I think her redemption moment is very undeserved. And that's the big problem. These big development moments, they all happen out of nowhere. Miranda, Emily, some of the stuff with Andy, it happens last minute. There was never really any development building up to it. It didn't have an arc. It just comes like that, and it feels like it didn't earn these moments. By the end, it doesn't feel like the original had kind of a bittersweet but hopeful message. This one goes for the happy all around message, and I just fucking hated it. And there was just so many annoying moments, and the best thing I can say to sum up my feelings on The Devil Wears Prada 2 is, before I saw this movie, I watched a film that involved a pedophile castrating himself with a pair of garden shears. And you know what? That movie was a lot easier to sit through than this piece of crap, so take that with ya. And yeah, there's been a lot of mixed bags, kind of disappointment so far this year, but I still am glad I got to go out. I love going to the cinema, even if it's a bad film. It gives me something to review, and while it's disappointing and definitely unnecessary in my eyes, maybe you'll enjoy it, because until the last act, this film was riding a 2-star rating, where not the absolute worst, but not great, just a few fun moments. But in the end, I feel like I could have devoted my time to something much better. But then again, that's just me, and I still love the first film, and I'll gladly go back to that anytime I feel like it. So, hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Or not. Leave a comment, let me know what you thought of the film, if you agree or disagree, and I will see you again, hopefully soon.